Shalom. Welcome back. This is Rabbi Abraham Fisher for Parsha Highlights and Insights. This week we're going to learn about Parashat Miketz. Parashat Miketz continues the story of Yosef and his brothers. The focus is primarily on Yosef. Um, when we last left Yosef at the end of the last parasha, Yosef was at arguably one of the lowest points in his life. He had been sold as a slave by his own brothers down to Egypt, although with Hashem's help, he was able to show that he could rise to whatever challenge was placed before him. And so he may have been a slave, but he became the chief slave to Potiphar. And then, because of an accusation of Potiphar's wife, he was thrown in jail. So he was a slave who was in jail, even worse. But in jail, there too, he rose because Hashem was with him. Hashem was able to uh, give him an opportunity to develop his abilities and help others. So he became the assistant to the head of the jail. And then, because he has abilities in interpreting dreams, he successfully and accurately interpreted the dreams of the two advisors, servants to the king, who had dreams that disturbed them. And as a result, although the chief baker was hanged, was executed, the chief wine steward was reinstated. And Yosef had said that when you are reinstated, as your dream predicts, please remember me before Paro and tell him that I am here unjustly. The accusations against me are false. However, as the last week's parasha ends, the chief wine steward, the Sar Hamashkim, did not remember Yosef. He forgot him. And apparently, it is not quite the right time for the process of redemption to begin. Remember, there's a process of redemption that is predicted that went back to the time of Abraham, where Hashem said to Abraham, at what was called the Brit Ben Abetarim, the covenant between the pieces, that the descendants of Abraham would become strangers in a land that's not theirs. They'd be enslaved and oppressed for a period of 400 years, and then they would be redeemed and brought back to the land. And that would be the process of redemption. But first, it has to start from a very, very low place. And that process is about to begin. So we have Yosef in jail at the beginning of Parashat Miketz. Let's see how the parasha unfolds. Okay. Let me get my. Okay. Just see the outline here. You'll see me later. Okay. So 2 years pass. 2 years during which Yosef is waiting for something to happen. But as we find in the very first part of the parasha, this is when Yosef rises from the depths of prison to eventually become a ruler over Egypt. The beginning of the parasha, 2 years after Yosef is sitting in jail, Yosef has dreams. He has 2 dreams that disturb him. The first dream involves cows. First 7 good-looking cows, healthy-looking cows, and that's followed by 7 very scrawny-looking cows, and they all emerge from the Yaor, from the Nile River. And then the scrawny cows swallow up the healthy cows, and then Paro wakes up, and then he has another dream. And in his second dream, he sees 7 ears of grain that arise from one stalk. and though they are very healthy looking, and that's followed by 7 other stalks of ears of grain, which are very scrawny looking. And once again, swallowing takes place. And this is even more fanciful. This is more dreamlike, in which the ears of grain swallow the healthy looking ears of grain. And once again, Paro rather, awakes, and he's very disturbed by his dreams. Uh, Paro wants an interpretation of his dreams. No doubt, Paro thinks that his dreams are very important because he's very important, and because his dreams show what's going to happen to his nation. And so he turns to all of his wise men and asks them to interpret the dream, and they are unable to do so. It seems that one after the other, the wise men think that these 2 dreams are 2 different predictions. We'll see that that underlying assumption is incorrect. But it's at this point that the chief wine steward, who is among Paro's advisors and close people, suddenly remembers that he's done something terrible. He's forgotten Yosef, and now he remembers. And he says to Paro what had happened, that when he and the chief baker had disturbing dreams, there was this young Hebrew slave, that's the way he describes him, young Hebrew slave that was in the prison with them, who was able to interpret the dreams. And of course, Paro gives orders that Yosef is brought to him. Of course, you can't appear before the king, before Pharaoh, looking the way that Yosef must have looked after 2 years of imprisonment. And so he's prepared. He's washed up, and his clothes are changed, and he's given a haircut, and he appears before Paro. And then Paro tells Yosef his dreams, and so the Torah has Paro repeat exactly the dreams and how they appeared to him. And now Yosef, who has said that it is not I but Hashem who grants us the understanding of dreams, Yosef begins to interpret the dream. Time and time again, Yosef mentions Hashem's name. It's very, very important. It's very central to the way that Yosef talks. Yosef is a very capable person. As we've said before, he's someone who can arise above virtually any difficult situation, but he always attributes his success to Hashem. So he says that he will interpret the dreams. And the first thing he says is that the 2 dreams of Paro are really one dream. It is one message that is given twice in 2 different ways. And he explains at the end that the reason why Paro is given this dream at all, first of all, is because God is telling Paro what is going to happen. And also the reason why why it's really one dream given twice is because this is decided upon by Hashem. Hashem has decided that what is about to happen is going to happen, and it's a decree before God. And what is about to happen? Well, both the 7 good-looking cows, healthy cows, and the 7 healthy ears of grain represent 7 years of plenty. Egypt is going to have 7 years of unprecedented plenty. And then the 7 scrawny cows and the 7 scrawny-looking ears of grain represent 7 years of famine. And this, right after the 7 years of plenty, there will be 7 years of famine. And it will be so bad, the famine will be so bad that people will forget how plentiful were the years of plenty. Yosef doesn't stop there. He says that someone needs to be appointed. Paro needs to appoint someone to collect the food, the surplus food, during the years of plenty, and then be able to distribute that surplus food during famine. It's been said that Yosef seems to overstep his his bounds. He was just told to interpret the dream, not to give Paro advice. But it's also been said that if Paro would have challenged him on that, he could have said that the dream itself indicates that the years of famine will subsist from the surplus of the years of plenty. So that's really implicit in the dream itself. Paro doesn't call him on it. As a matter of fact, he says, "You've shown yourself to be the most capable person around for such a task," and therefore he gives this task to Yosef. Yosef, who is 30 years old at the time that he appears before Paro. Okay, he was 17 when he left home. He was 17 when he was a shepherd, and now all the years intervening, he's now 30 years old. And he is elevated to a position just under the position of Paro. He's given the title of Tsafanat Pa'aneach, which Rashi says means that he is able to interpret that which is secret. Others find that if you learn about the Egyptian language, the ancient Egyptian language, it means something like the one who provides food for life. But it is a title that is given to Yosef. It's only mentioned here just this once. It's never mentioned again, at least not in the text. Yosef is given great honor. He is second to Paro. He's dressed like a royal official. He is given the second chariot after Paro's, and Yosef is prospering. We're also told that during the years of plenty, Yosef builds a family. He marries. His wife is Asenat, the daughter of Potiphera, and they have two children that are born before the years of famine begin. The first one is named Menashe, because God has enabled me to forget. Menashe comes from the word that means to forget. Has allowed me to forget my home. And Ephraim is the second child, and that has to do with being fruitful. He has made me fruitful. Hashem has made me fruitful in this place. Even though Yosef still shares the idea that he is suffering because he misses his home, his connection with his father and his family. And then, of course, during the years of plenty, Yosef does his job. He supervises the collection of food, and that collection of food also involves doling out exactly the right amount of food for everybody during those years of plenty, as much as they need, but not more, and then preserving the surplus. And then when the years of famine begin, he starts the distribution of food. And people go to Paro and say, "Give us food." But Paro says to the people, "Go to Yosef. He is the one who is in charge of distributing food." And so the people of Egypt come to Yosef, and Yosef distributes the food. And as the famine in Egypt has an effect on the entire world, people from all over the world come to Egypt for food. And it is under those circumstances that we find that the brothers of Yosef also come down to Egypt in order to purchase food. And this is during the second year of the famine. When food is becoming short, Yaakov says to his sons, "Go down to Egypt to buy food." And so they do so. Of course, they bring money. Binyamin does not go with them. Only the other brothers go down go down to Egypt to buy the food. And no sooner do they appear before Yosef, because they must appear before Yosef in order to purchase this food. He's in charge. Yosef recognizes his brothers. They haven't changed that much. They've grown, but they haven't changed that much. But they do not recognize him because he's changed a great deal. First of all, when he left, he was young. He was 17. He's now about 38 years old. Uh, so he's aged. Also, Chazal teach us that when he left, he didn't really have a beard yet, but now he does. But also, he is dressed like an Egyptian. Uh, he uh, he certainly speaks to everyone else in Egyptian, in the Egyptian language, although, of course, he understands everything that his brothers say amongst themselves in the Hebrew language. Uh, so they come to buy food, and no sooner does he recognize them that he accuses them of being spies. We'll talk about this more at the end. Uh, he says to them, you're spies. You've come in here to spy out to find the weak spots in the land of Egypt." And they protest, "No, we're not spies. We're brothers. Altogether, we're 12 brothers. One is still home with our father, and one is no longer." That's a reference to Yosef. They can't say he's dead because they're not sure he's dead. And it's good that they don't say that because he isn't dead. As a matter of fact, he's right there before them. Uh, Yosef still doubts their argument, or at least he professes to doubt them, and he says, "Well, if you want to prove that you really are brothers, you're going to have to bring back this youngest brother that you speak of. Then I'll believe you. So you stay here and send one of you. Decide which one of you is going to go back to Canaan to get your youngest brother." And then he has them placed in jail for 3 days, during which time they do not offer any one of them to do this. It's probably because it would be very dangerous for one to go back by himself, and it is not for them to decide which one of them should go on this dangerous mission. And so, after 3 days, Yosef releases them from jail. He seems to accept, at least partially, that there are people back home who are relying upon them for food. And he says, "Well, you can go back, but if you decide to return here to Egypt in order to buy more food, because the food that you're buying now will eventually run out, you will not be allowed to purchase food. You will not be able to appear before me unless you bring this youngest brother of whom you've spoken before me." And Yosef then says, "In order to make sure of this, I will keep one of you here with me until you return." And the brothers talk amongst themselves, of course, in Hebrew, which Yosef, of course, understands. And they don't think he understands it because throughout this time, there's an interpreter between them, interpreting between the Hebrew that they speak and the Egyptian language which he speaks. But of course, he does understand them. And he hears them say amongst themselves that we are suffering now because of what we did to our brother, meaning Yosef. So it seems to Yosef that perhaps they are remorseful for what they did to him. And also, Ruvain also speaks up and says, "Well, at the time I warned you and I told you not to do this, but you did not listen to me." Yosef understands all of this, and he is overcome by emotion, and so he turns away uh, so they don't see him, and he cries, and then he composes himself. He doesn't want them to know that he's crying. He doesn't want what he's planned to be given up just yet, and so he sends the brothers back. He says that he would keep. He said that he would keep one of the brothers with him, and he chooses Shimon. There's a whole discussion as to why he chooses Shimon and keeps him in Egypt and has Shimon bound while they're watching. Our rabbis teach us that it's only while the brothers were still there that Shimon is bound, and as soon as they leave, Shimon is unbound. But why does he keep Shimon back? A couple of reasons are suggested. One, Ruvain has shown that he had compassion for Yosef, and the next one in age, the next one who would be responsible, should be Shimon. Uh, an additional reason, no less persuasive, is that when Shimon and Levi are together, they've shown in the past in the incident in Shechem, what kind of violence they are capable of. And so the idea is for Shimon and Levi to be kept apart from each other. And a third reason that is given uh, is that it's very possible that Shimon was the one who initially recommended that they kill Yosef, and maybe Yosef actually heard this while they were arguing over him and throwing him into the pit. He could tell that Shimon was the one who was most in favor of killing him. Whatever the reason, Yosef keeps Shimon behind, and he gives a command, a secret command to those who work for him, his servants. And he says, well, fill their sacks with food, of course, and also put their money into their sacks, return their sacks to them. And then they begin the trip back to Canaan. On the way back, one of the brothers, this doesn't say which one, but the Midrash says that it's Levi, uh, needs to give some food to his donkey, and so he opens his sack and he discovers that his money has been returned, and even though it's possible that he's the only one that this has happened to, um, the brothers all react. What has Hashem done to us? He's doing something to all of us, even not only to this one brother, but we're all going to suffer. The brothers return to Yaakov, and they tell Yaakov all that has happened. Um, that they were accused wrongfully of being spies. That they said that they were all brothers. Originally 12 brothers, one of whom is still home with his father. He's the youngest, and one of whom is no longer with us. And they said that we can't return to buy food in the future without our youngest brother. And in the meanwhile, the man in charge kept Shimon behind. And then the brothers begin to open up their sacks, and they discover that all of them have had their money returned. And this seems like a terrible turn of events, because what's going to happen is they are going to be accused of stealing, and it's only going to compound matters when they inevitably have to go back to Egypt to purchase more food. And Yaakov says, all of these tragedies have happened to me. Um, Yosef is no longer, Shimon is no longer, Shimon is not with me. Um, if you take Binyamin from me also, I will not be able to live. Ruvain pledges to help. He says, I will, if we return, I will bring Binyamin. I promise that I will bring Binyamin back with me. And if not, you can kill my two sons. Yaakov doesn't respond to that. And it's possible that Ruvain's only saying that as an expression of how confident he is that he will return. But Yaakov does not want to address what Ruvain has said. So he says that, well, at least for the time being, you are not going down to Egypt. Uh, we just have to deal with the situation as it is. But eventually, the famine becomes very severe. They run out of food, and the brothers need to go back to Egypt. And so Yaakov says, "Go down to Egypt again to buy more food." And Yehuda repeats, "We cannot go down without Binyamin." So it's in this exchange that we see that Yehuda is really obviously the leader of the brothers. He's the one who speaks for all of them. He says, "We cannot go down without Binyamin." Yaakov repeats, "Why did you tell the man who's in charge that you have another brother named Binyamin?" And the brothers kind of sheepishly said, "Well, he asked if we have any others, and we said we do." Um, but it's not much of an answer. But that's the way the situation is now. And Yehuda makes a very, very important offer, commitment. He says, I will take personal responsibility for Binyamin. He doesn't say, you can kill my children. He says, I will take personal responsibility. I will be like a co-signer. And if I do not bring him back alive, then you can consider me a sinner before you all my days. And the rabbis teach us that he means that he will give up his place in the world to come as well. Yaakov, realizing that there really is no alternative, it's necessary for them to go back because they do need food, says, well, go down, take some gifts. And there's a list of some of the gifts that are special to the land of Israel, as a gift to the man, to make him more pleasantly disposed towards you. Of course, take additional money to buy more food and bring back the money that was returned, because that's really not yours. And you can say that it must be some sort of a mistake. And of course, they're going to bring it back. And then Yaakov prays. He prays that may Hashem give you compassion before the man. May Hashem instill this man who's being so cruel to you with compassion before you. So the brothers return to Egypt now a second time. This time, Yosef sees Binyamin amongst them, and of course he's very moved by this, and he gives an order to the person who is over his household, and he says, "Bring them to my house, and I will come later." And the brothers are afraid. They're actually afraid to go inside the house because who knows what can be done to them once they are inside Yosef's house. And so they conduct part of the conversation at the door. The brothers say to the chief of Yosef's household, we've returned the money that was put mistakenly into our sacks, and of course we've brought other monies in order to buy the food. Chief of Yosef's household says, do not fear. Your God has given this to you, has given this treasure to you. And he brings out Shimon. And then they are brought into Yosef's home. They're welcome into the home. And then Yosef returns. And now his mood, his attitude towards them seems to have changed a great deal. He's very kind to them. He asks after their father's welfare, and they say that our father is alive. He gives a blessing to the youngest, the one that he hasn't seen before, Binyamin. But he's really overcome by emotion, and so he goes into a private place, cries, composes himself, washes his face, and then joins them for a meal. And the Torah describes a meal fit for a king, in which the brothers who are Hebrews and shepherds do not eat together with the Egyptians, because the Egyptians abhor the life of a shepherd, possibly because they worshipped those animals that the Hebrews tended. And also they ate very well. It also says that they drank, and that's the mood of this very, very special and relaxed meal. In the final part of the parasha, before they are sent off, we have the ultimate test, the test of Yosef's cup, of his special cup. Yosef speaks to those who work for him, his servants, fill their sacks with food, return their money once again, and place my cup, my very, very special cup, into Binyamin's sack. And so the brothers leave. And no sooner do they leave that Yosef gives another order to follow them. And when you catch up with them, accuse them of stealing my cup. Say, why are you returning the kindness that I showed you and the understanding that I showed you with such an act of stealing? And their initial argument when they are caught, when when Yosef's men catch up with them, and accuse them of this, they said, "Well, look, we returned the money that was placed in our sacks before, so of course we would never steal." In other words, we've shown ourselves to be honest people. Why would we steal? And They say, well, whoever has stolen, maybe they think that one of their slaves stole, he will be punished. He will die, and and we'll be slaves. Maybe they are so confident that no one has done so. The chief says, corrects what their argument. Says the thief alone will be a slave, and you will all be set free. And then they begin to examine. And this is very similar to what happened examining for Lavan's totems, his terafim. Um, they examine everyone. So, and eventually the cup is discovered in Binyamin's sack. Binyamin, who is the son of Rachel. As soon as the brothers see this, they tear their garments. They realize that this is terrible because Binyamin seems to be the thief. Not that they think he is a thief, but uh, that is the uh, that is the false accusation that's going to be laid on Binyamin, and that means that Binyamin is going to stay, and they will have to go back. They would have to go back without Binyamin back to Yaakov, and that surely would mean the end of Yaakov's life. Yaakov would not be able to survive such a shock. And so, uh, very, very worried and and downhearted, they all return to Yosef's house, and Yosef accuses them. I was very kind to you. I was very compassionate to you. How could you have done this to me? And Yehuda, who's now very clearly the spokesman for all of the brothers, says, "We are all your slaves." Essentially, he's saying, if we're not going, rather than go back without Binyamin, we'd rather all of us not go back. We will all be your slaves. And Yosef corrects them. And he says, only the thief will remain here. The rest of you return in peace to your father. And that is the end of the parasha. Here we have the parasha ends at a point of great suspense. What will the brothers do? Will they accept Yosef's offer and just let Binyamin also suffer and not care about their father? We know better, but the question is, what will they do? Or will something be done in order to change the course of events? We'll have to wait till next week's parasha in order to find out. I should say before we look at something particular inside the parasha that most years Parashat Miketz is read during Chanukah. Uh, and It's interesting that Hanukkah is also a story about a conflict between different members of the Jewish people, those who were more aligned with the Greeks and those who were less so. So Miketz really exemplifies uh, some themes of Hanukkah. But this year it's not read. It's very rare, but it's not read during Hanukkah. It's read right after Hanukkah is over, when Hanukkah is still fresh in our minds. Let's take a close look at what Yosef does when he first sees his brothers for the first time. The Psukim say that Yosef, hu hashalit al haaretz, he was the vizier, the ruler over the land. Hu hamashbir, he was the one who provided food l'chol am haaretz, for all the people of the land. Vayavo achei Yosef, the brothers of Yosef came. Vayishtachavu lo apayim alza, and they bowed with their faces to the ground, which actually is a fulfillment of at least one of Yosef's dreams. His brothers bow down to him, but not all of his brothers, at least not yet. At this point, Binyamin isn't there. Then Vayal Yosef et Echav, Yosef saw his brothers, vayakirem, and he recognized them. Vayitnakaru elav alehem, and he acted like a stranger toward them. He maybe disguised himself, or he changed his tone towards them. Vayidaber itam kashor, he spoke with them harshly. Vayomer aleihem, and he said to them, Me'ayin batem, where are you from? Vayomru me'eretz Canaan, where we've come from the land of Canaan. Lishbor ochel, to procure, to purchase food. Vayakir Yosef et echav, he recognized his brothers. V'hem lo hikiru, although they did not recognize him. Still, he may have recognized that among all of his brothers there, Binyamin was not amongst them. Vayizkor Yosef et hachalomot asher chalam lahem. And Yosef remembered the dreams that he had dreamed about them. Vayomer aleihem, and he said to them, Meraglimatem, you are spies, lirot et ervat haaretz batem. In order to see the nakedness of the land, you have come. As we said, that's when Yosef accuses them, and they have to deal with that accusation. Among the questions that can be asked about this is, why is Yosef doing this? And one of the approaches that we find that is in the commentary of the Ramban. The Ramban says that when Yosef saw that Binyamin was not amongst them, this is when Yosef began to devise this particular plan, because the fact that most of his brothers bowed down to him means that the dreams are on their way to being fulfilled. But in order for it to come true, he has to make Binyamin come down also. So he comes up with a scheme so that they would bring Binyamin also, in order to fulfill the dream, lekayem hachalom, in order to fulfill the dream, and therefore he didn't tell them right away that he is Yosef. This is a controversial position of the Ramban, but apparently the Ramban holds that because Yosef was convinced that these dreams were prophetic, they absolutely must come true. And if they must come true, he must be instrumental in making them come true. The dream said that all of his brothers would bow before him. Then he will make it possible for all of his brothers, including Binyamin, to bow before him. And then later on, the Ramban says that after the first dream came true, because Binyamin has now bowed before him, now he is planning for the second dream to come true, in which not only his brothers, but the sun and the moon. And question about what the moon represents, can't represent his mother, because his mother is no longer alive, but the sun definitely represents his father. The moon, according to the Ramban, represents all of the other members of the family. But in order for all of them, including the father, to bow before him, he has to proceed to the next element, which is to make it the case that Yaakov also will come down and bow before him. And the Ramban argues, he says, if this weren't so, if Yosef weren't absolutely convinced that these dreams are prophetic and they must come true, then Yosef would be doing a terrible sin to make his father suffer, and to prolong his father's years of grieving over Yosef, which he undoubtedly must be grieving, and also now over Shimon, who's not there. And even if Yosef had some kind of justification in causing some suffering for his brothers because of what they did to him, but he should at least have some compassion on his old father. But, and I'll just highlight this part. Aval, however, et hakol asa yafe beito. He did all of this, that which was appropriate in its time, in order to fulfill the dreams, because he knew that they would definitely come true. They would certainly come true. He was so persuaded of this that he is instrumental in making them happen. Of course, there are critics of the Ramban who say that if God is going to make something come true, God will do it. Yosef, you don't have to. You shouldn't be the one to bring it about, to make it come true, especially because you know how it's your father's going to suffer. But the Ramban's reading, the Ramban's understanding, is that Yosef is making it happen precisely because he is convinced that it must come true. And towards the very end, he adds one interesting additional point, which is after he heard about Pharaoh's dream and he had the opportunity to interpret Pharaoh's dream, nitbarer lo, it became clear, ki avo kulam shama, that all of them would come there to Egypt. In other words, that this dream of Yosef, the dreams of Yosef, which must inevitably come true according to Yosef, it seemed at that point to Yosef, well, if they're going to come true, they're going to come true in Egypt because of Paro's dreams, making it possible for him to orchestrate matters. So all of those dreams of Yosef would come true in Egypt. So it's the Ramban's position that Yosef was convinced that his dreams were prophetic and that they therefore must come true. And therefore, Yosef brought about this series of plans in order first for his brothers to bow down and eventually for his father also to bow down to him. We'll have to wait for next parasha to see whether that second dream comes true in its fullness or not. More things to look forward to. So the parasha ends with what can only be described as a suspenseful cliffhanger. What will happen next? I thank you all for being with me, and once again, I wish everyone good rest of the week. Chanukah Sameach, Shabbat Shalom, and this is Rabbi Avraham Fisher for Parasha Highlights and Insights, saying Shalom.